Welcome to the Business Growth Spotlight, where we shine the light and talk with business leaders from all over the world who are coming on to share their insights and wisdom so we can all grow together. I'm your host, Heidi Schalk, and if you're new to the podcast, welcome. We're so excited to have you here. I'm co-founder of HLH Growth Solutions, and we work with companies to help them scale their revenue using outside-of-the-box visibility methods. Please stay till the end if you're new, because we have a special gift for you. So without further ado, let's dive in. I'm so excited to be chatting with my guest today, Kelly Fairbairn with PPS International. Welcome, Kelly, to the podcast, and I'm so happy to have you here.
Thank you. Pleasure to be here.
Absolutely. Let's just kick us off, Kelly, with telling us a little bit about who you are, your company, and your role within it.
Yeah, absolutely. So I am co-founder, president, and CEO of PPS International Limited. We are a talent development organization. We work globally and locally, regionally, doing things such as assessments, training, facilitation, all geared towards what our name says, People Performance Solution. That's the PPS. I am also CEO of Signet Americas. That is when we work globally with our global clients. They often want to implement not only within the Americas and United States, they also want to work in Latin America, EMEA, APAC regions. And so when we work with them that way, we have partners around the world that work under a Signet global name. I didn't start my career as a consultant. I have been consulting this is now our 5th year in business. So we have a lot to share around what works and what doesn't work and how did we navigate that. But I started my career actually as a director of human resources and instructional designer. And so that work has shaped the way our consultancy has built and how we've chosen to work with our clients, whether they be small organizations or large, very recognizable names, because we do work across the board in all kinds of industries.
Thank you for sharing all of that. And I'm excited to learn what's worked for you, what hasn't worked for you. We're going to get there, especially with 25 years behind you with this company. So what are some of the biggest leadership gaps, Kelly, that you're seeing in companies today? And how does PPS help close those gaps?
Yeah, I think it wouldn't be surprising if anyone who's ever been in a leadership role, ever worked for a leader, you can kind of look out and say, okay, this worked, that didn't work. I liked this, I didn't like that. What we see right now are a couple of things. So the first is a big need around being able to manage ambiguity. There used to be a lot more stability. When I started my career, you could look out. We were doing 5-year plans. We were doing 10-year plans. We just don't have that kind of visibility now as leaders. And so the ability for a leader to be able to manage that ambiguity, to be able to continue to make decisions, move projects forward, work with their teams in the face of not having clear information, clear patterns, is a big thing that we work with organizations and specifically leaders on. And it's a gap that stays there. We also see, maybe not surprisingly, but the things that were important years ago are still important now. That idea of, can leaders set clear expectations? Do they change an expectation into an agreement? Are they able to give good feedback? How well do they communicate with others? Those things that maybe are the tried and true that we don't think about are still important now, and maybe in some ways, even given the volatility of the environments we work in, much more important to be able to deliver difficult messages and things like that. So those are two areas that we spend a good bit of time with the leaders that we work with focusing on in terms of gaps.
I really like that you shared that, or companies used to be able to forecast, 5 years or plan ahead that much.
Yeah.
And you're not the first person that I've heard this from. It hasn't been a ton, but there are people that I'm talking on the podcast who are sharing, we're no longer thinking a year out. We're no longer even thinking. So if they're not thinking a year out, they're not thinking about 5. Everything's just moving so fast, and you've got to be able to, like you said, respond and make decisions quicker. Some people are only looking 2 months ahead, right?
Yes.
That's all they can plan for. So I think
seasonally.
Yeah. whether it's quarterly, monthly, a couple months, seasonally, like you said. I think that's an important key takeaway because we're seeing it, and it was, like you said, it was not like that before.
No,
So the
no.
landscape is changing. How do you align leadership development programs with real business outcomes? So it's not just training, but transformation.
Mm. Well, as a business owner, I think very carefully about where would I spend my training dollars, right? When we are sending somebody to a conference or we're training our own teams to do things, I'm really aware of what's the return on that investment. And so I like the question in that this is where our clients are too. Why do we do training? Why do we develop people? And many of our clients come to us already having the solution in mind, right? I want this type of training, or I want this executive coaching, or I want to assess people to learn this. And so we do a little bit of backing up to figure out, well, what's the business purpose? Because we want to be connecting into that. And then we have other clients who come to us and they really don't know what they need. They come more with the business problem. And so either way, we're always looking to back into and see what is it from a business perspective that this individual, this group of individuals needs to do differently. And once we know that information, then it's fairly intuitive to be able to connect it. So if what we need, for instance, we work with a client where they were looking at leaderless organizations, and their need to do that from a business perspective was to shorten decision making, to improve return on investment and less expense from the management standpoint. And so the training that we were doing and the development that we were doing with their group was around how do we help them to realize those things that they've already identified. And so some of the practical ways we do that, making sure that we use real life situations. If we're doing development, whether that be virtual or in-person development, we want people to be using situations that are real to them, that make sense to them. We do a lot of on-the-job supports so that the things that we're teaching you, you can go back to and use. We expect that you will be able to use them to improve your performance on the job. So that's a little bit about how we make that connection between, what the need is and the business results and outcomes.
I'd like to talk a little bit about trends. So Kelly, what trends are you seeing in corporate learning, and how is PPS adapting to meet the needs of a hybrid and often remote workforce that we're seeing?
Yeah. So some of the trends, not surprisingly, a lot more on the virtual learning, right? We saw that during the pandemic, that individuals that would have typically been brought in for training, they're now doing that much more virtually. And I think the challenge there is, how do you engage people? How do you get them to really feel like they're in the same kind of environments that they would be using those skills in? And so that's a trend for sure. We are seeing a lot more on leading through experience and learning through experience. And that's an area that our organization is spending some time. If we want people to really learn on the job and learn from their experience, which helps them to be continuous learners, not have to wait until there's a training event, we need to put supports in place for that. Performance supports there. How do you look at a project that you just completed and actually learn from that? How do you look at a conversation that you had from a leadership standpoint and learn from that? So performance supports and learning on the job is a big part of what we see our small and large organizations leaning more into. It can be cost-effective way to do it, and it can work really well, especially we do see with our younger populations, those that are newer to their careers. They're used to learning. They'll go to YouTube and learn something, right? They'll listen to a podcast like this so that they can pick up on some things. So that learning in the flow of work and learning from experience is a big thing that we see in terms of trends. Those are probably two of the big ones.
Yeah, thank you so much. So how do you tailor your programs across industry and cultures while still maintaining consistent impact and outcomes?
Yeah. So how do you, especially knowing that we work globally, we work with different industries, how do we make sure that it's relevant no matter what's going on? One of those already relates back to something you and I just talked about, which is if it's related to the work and it has a meaningful business outcome, it's going to be relatable to that individual in that particular culture. And
Mm.
so that always comes first, that idea that we want to make sure that individuals see the relevance of what they're doing. And that translates whether we're doing it in Europe, in Asia Pacific, whether we're doing it here in the United States, Latin America. If people can see how it works for them in their role, then it's meaningful. The other thing that I think we do particularly well is even with those clients who maybe develop something that they're going to do here, and then they're going to deliver it globally in their various organizations, those small adjustments that you make using examples that are real for that particular culture, making sure that we have facilitators who grew up in that culture, speak the language, have an understanding of how does that translate in that culture. That's one of the other things that I think we do well as an organization.
Yeah. I'd like to talk a little bit about growth now. You've been here 25 years. Obviously, you're doing something right. And I'm sure it wasn't a straight line, a straight path to get here.
Yeah.
You know, we already know that things changed in 2020. Everybody knows
Yes.
every business had to make adjustments one way or another.
Yes.
And that's just one small piece over or time period over the 25 years. So
Yes.
can you share with us, some of the things as far as like visibility or marketing, how you're getting
Yes.
into these businesses that you support and maybe some things that have worked for you that you're like, this,
Yeah.
I'm doubling, we're going full in on this. And maybe some things that you've tried, you're like, just doesn't work for us.
Yeah. I think, like many businesses that focus on people, we have found that the higher the relationship that we have with clients, the stronger that is in terms of business development. And I guess what I mean by that is we've had less success with things like print advertising or doing an email marketing. We have more success when we are helping our clients, when we're in relationship with them, we know what they're struggling with from day to day. And so how do we start those relationships? A lot of it is referral, and to have referrals from a growth standpoint, you have to be doing good work, right?
Right.
Nobody's going to refer you unless they see the value and they see that what you did really helped them. And so there's a little bit of a chicken and an egg, like what comes first. But in terms of staying in touch with our clients, we know that our clients, they're really learners themselves, right? They're drawn to their industry of talent and development, learning and development, because they like to learn themselves. They like to help other people learn. And so we've had a lot of success in really helping our clients, sharing information, helping them benchmark. All right, you're researching how best can you build engagement within a 5 generations workforce. Let me connect you with another client that does that. Content marketing has been pretty important for us as well. Giving our clients things that they can use so that they don't have to necessarily come to us in order to bring something about, like sharing a white paper, sharing an infographic, giving them a video. We do a lot of that via our resource center on our website, where we're sharing not only case studies and best practices, but we're sharing tools that our clients who are very savvy can pick up and use.
Yeah.
So those things have helped us a lot with our growth. I think the balance for us is we tend to be so deep with the projects that we work on to remember that our clients want to hear from us. They want to know what other things we're working on. They have this natural curiosity. And so I think one of the things maybe we could even improve more is how do we stay in touch with our clients more without being a pest, right? So that
Right.
we're sharing things that are useful.
Yeah, so good. So everything you said was like gold right there. When it comes to let's talk about challenges because
Yeah,
again, 25 years, I'm sure you've had some
there's been a
challenges
few.
along the way. So what challenges have you had, Kelly, in your growth and how have you overcome them?
Yeah. Well, they actually mirror a lot of the things that our clients face. Talent, right? We have 200 plus consultants that we work with regularly around the world. You don't build a network just by collecting resumes and sticking them with a client on a certain project. You've got to make sure that you understand that talent And across distance, I think that can be really difficult. So just like our clients, building our talent, building our network of trusted consultants who we can put in front of a client and know that they're doing the quality of work has been big. And so one of the things that we put in place close to 2 years ago now is we now have a director of consultant operations whose primary role is to foster those relationships, make sure we stay in touch, that we're seeing our consultants in action so that we know what our talent is capable of, and we're matching them up well with our clients. So talent for us has been a big one. I think the other has just been changing technology. And so the technology that we now have available, I remember when we started out, and back then to do something virtually, it was much more difficult than it is now. And so we are constantly looking at what technology can support us, knowing that a lot of what we teach is people, how people relate to one another. And so how do you use technology to support that, but not necessarily get in the way of what we're trying to teach? And there can be some big lifts in terms of implementing technology, especially when our clients have their favorites. And so you have to know not only what you're using, but be able to link into what a client uses.
Yeah, I think that is so important, and that you're understanding what they're comfortable with,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
Yeah, because if not, then you're losing the mark, you're missing the mark, because we don't want to make things more difficult for our clients. We want to make it easier. So, which I'm sure that means that you have to do more, and you have to do more learning on those specific
Yes,
pieces too.
we
Um,
do.
if I could hand you a magic wand, Kelly, and you could wave it over one thing that's holding you back from, or one issue that you're having right now that you could go poof and take away, that could be holding you back from achieving your goals, what would that be and why?
So there's enough of them. Anyone who's a business leader knows if you had a magic wand, you'd want to be able to use it more than once. I think we are very nimble with our clients, right? We almost never pull something off the shelf and say, this is what you get. And I know there are some consultancies that do that, but if I had a magic wand, it would be able to replicate that intimacy of experience with a client where you really can be there and you can have a lot of time with that client, be able to adjust in a nimble way, but not necessarily having to staff it in such a way that a client can't bite off that type of investment. So there's that sweet spot, I think, of finding where can you be attentive to a client, where can you be attentive to their needs and really adjust to their needs, but also not end up being so heavily loaded with back end support that you're just not a viable solution for them in terms of being, having a good value, a good price, being able to invest in it. Does that
Yeah,
make sense?
absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah.
So what's next for PPS? Like, if we could bring you back in a year, Kelly, and sit down and revisit this conversation, what does success look like for PPS and
Yeah.
for you?
Well, there's a couple of things on the horizon. I think two of them that I would like to point out that we're moving much more into is we are seeing that clients really benefit from being able to do coaching, and not just at an executive level. Often we hear executive coaching. And so we're actively working on coaching packages and group coaching that will allow a much broader audience within an organization to benefit from that one-on-one experience that you get in that type of development. So executive coaching and coaching packages that really expand and work across various levels of the organization is something that we're focused on. And then the other thing that we are doing that many of our clients have already started to dabble in is micro learning. And that is, how can we give it in a bite-sized way so that somebody is learning something over time as they need it, and not having to come to an hour or even to spend 15 minutes on something, that they can do it in a much smaller way. And so we're doing that through micro lessons that are really geared towards, this is this particular skill I want you to focus on today. And we're finding that clients like that and the learners like that. We can do it. We can fit it into an already full day. So those are two of the things that I hope, if we were to come back, that we'd be able to say that we had broader reach on and that we were able to have clients really participate in more.
Oh, I'm excited for you all.
Yeah, we are too.
So the last question for you, Kelly, for companies scaling quickly, what advice do you have for building leadership capacity without slowing momentum?
I think focus on one or two, I call them leadership levers. What are those things in your organization that if you were to pull that lever, invest in that, it would have broad reach? I listened to some research around strategy, and what it struck was it's not so much what you do. It's can you do it in a way that you can keep doing it long enough for people to learn it, internalize it. And so that's why I say we don't need to do five or six things. Pick those one or two things, stick with them long enough to see the results and for people to be able to come along with you on that journey. That's what I'd say. And that's worked for us as an organization too. Not trying to do everything all at once, but picking those high leverage leadership things that will work.
Yeah. So for companies listening to you and they're like, I want to learn more about your programs and training and coaching with PPS, how can they connect with you and Kelly and learn more?
Yeah. We're very active on LinkedIn, and so they can follow us on LinkedIn at PPS International Limited. So they'll see us there, and we post infographics, tools, case studies, things that if you're in the industry are very useful in terms of supporting you as you develop your people. So that's a great place. And we also on our website, ppsinternational.net, have a resource center that has a little bit more in-depth resources for those who are in HR, talent and development, learning and development, chief learning officer type role. And so we just invite people to reach out to us in those areas.
Fantastic. And we're going to have all of Kelly's information in the show notes. So if you didn't catch it right now, don't worry. We're going to have it all in the show notes. Go there and you can connect with her on LinkedIn, PPS International Limited on LinkedIn. You can also go to the website, ppsinternational.net. And if you're watching us on YouTube, thank you for being here.
Yes.
Don't forget to hit that subscribe button. Leave Kelly a note below. And please share. If you know of any founder or business owner, company that could use these services or just need the information, please share this episode with them. And because Kelly is spending her time out of her busy day to come here and share with you, we would love the return love shared. If you're listening to us on your favorite podcast platform like Apple, Spotify, Amazon, or any of the other ones, and you can leave a review, we'd love 5 stars because that helps us share this content out with more people. And the goal of this podcast is to see more businesses succeeding. We see too many that close their doors, and Kelly's a perfect example. They've been here for 25 years. They're doing something right. So let's get this message and what she shared out to more people. Kelly, I also, for you listeners, I promised you a gift. So before I go back to Kelly, if you are looking to grow your visibility and you're feeling like you're doing things, Kelly shared, they're putting out content and they're getting referrals. If you feel like you're doing things that's just not getting you the action that you or the traction that you want, then go ahead and download our Spotlight to Scale blueprint. You can go to spotlighttoscale.com/blueprint and grab that. Kelly, before we wrap, is there anything that I didn't get to ask you or that you want to share?
I appreciate that. No, I think we touched on a lot of things that are useful to those in the industry and also business owners. So thank you for inviting me. It was nice to spend this time with you.
Yes, thank you. I know the weather over there is a little rainy like it is here.
Yeah.
But we made it through without any internet issues. So that was wonderful. And yes, I do thank you for your time. I appreciate you being a yes to being on here. So thank you very much for sharing
My
your
pleasure.
Absolutely. Thank you for listening to Kelly and I today. And we look forward to seeing you on the next episode of the Business Growth Spotlight.